Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. I am really glad you decided to take a breather and join me today. In a world that is literally always on, always demanding our attention, and just constantly draining our energy, we're going to explore something quietly fascinating. We're looking at the invisible safety nets that power our most critical tech. It's a unique piece of engineering, chemistry that actually thrives on patience. So just take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's dive into the quiet power of reserve batteries. Seriously, think about this question for a second. How exactly do you power a device that might need to wait 10 years, or honestly even longer, before it's finally turned on? I mean, if you leave your smartphone or your laptop in a drawer for just a few months, you already know what's going to happen, right? You pull it out, hit the power button, and nothing. The battery just completely drained away in the background. But there are certain critical devices out there that absolutely cannot afford a dead battery when their big moment arrives. They need energy that can be stored indefinitely without fading away. So, how does science solve that? Let's start with Chapter 1, the batteries we know. Okay, if you're a college student, you are probably way too familiar with the concept of energy drain. You're living in this high-pressure, constantly demanding environment powered by the batteries we see categorized right here. They broadly fall into two main groups. On the left, we've got primary batteries. These are single-use. Basically, the chemical energy converts to electrical energy only as long as the active components are present. Once they deplete, that's it. They can't be regenerated. Think of those alkaline batteries in your TV remote. They give their energy once, and they're done. Now, over on the right, we have secondary batteries. These are the rechargeable ones, like the lithium-ion battery sitting in your phone right now. They rely on reversible redox reactions, meaning we can push electrical energy back in to reverse that chemical exhaustion. But as you definitely know, it's just this constant, never-ending cycle of draining and recharging. And this perfectly illustrates what's actually happening inside those cells. We can see the redox reactions in action, which, is basically just the trading of electrons that generates power. In the primary battery, the electrons flow one way, from the anode to the cathode, right until those active materials are completely chewed up. It's a one-way trip. But in the secondary battery, you can see the cycle. During discharge, it acts just like a primary cell. But during charging, we literally force the current in the opposite direction, essentially turning an inactive material back into an active one. It's an exhausting, continuous loop. These everyday batteries have to process their chemistry in a way that keeps them either constantly active or constantly tethered to a wall outlet. Moving on to Chapter 2, the patient battery. Let's step away from the constant hustle of those everyday primary and secondary cells and look at the unsung hero of the electrochemical world. A reserve battery is this entirely different class of battery, specifically designed for extreme storage and an incredibly long shelf life. And how does it pull that off? Honestly, through some brilliantly simple logic. It physically separates a key component, usually the electrolyte, from the rest of the cell. In a normal battery, the internal parts are always touching, which causes localized reactions and self-discharge, even when your device is totally turned off. But by keeping the active ingredients apart, the reserve battery completely prevents any self-discharge from happening at all. It just rests peacefully until the exact moment it's called upon. This whole architecture builds into a beautifully tranquil three-step life cycle. Step 1 is inactive storage. The battery is basically sitting there in suspended animation. The electrolyte is completely isolated, meaning absolutely no chemical reactions can happen. Step 2 is the activation trigger. Some external event introduces that missing component into the cell. And boom, Step 3, immediate power generation. The very second those components meet, the battery is fully awake and delivers a rush of totally reliable power. It's a system completely defined by a long, quiet period of waiting followed by immediate, decisive action. That brings us to Chapter 3, 3 triggers of awakening. So now that we understand the peaceful architecture of these batteries, we kind of have to ask, how do they actually know when it's time to wake up? What's really cool here is how perfectly tailored each of these 3 triggers is to its specific environment. And don't worry, we don't need to get bogged down in stressful math or intense chemical formulas here. Just look at the elegant design. We've got 3 main classifications: thermal, water-activated, and gas-activated. Thermal batteries are triggered when intense heat literally melts a solid electrolyte. Water-activated batteries wake up the second they're exposed to water. And gas-activated batteries, they need the introduction of a specific gas. Notice the applications column, too. We're not talking about powering a TV remote. These are used in aerospace, life jackets, and critical military systems. They are the ultimate safety nets. Let's zoom in on the water-activated battery for a sec. This is such a wonderfully reassuring example. During normal storage, these batteries are kept completely 100% dry, and because there's no moisture, there's zero chemical reaction. But picture a scenario at sea where emergency equipment is suddenly submerged. That exposure to water instantly floods the separated chamber, triggering the battery. In literally a fraction of a second, life-saving equipment like buoys and the little lights on life jackets are fully powered on. It acts as this silent guardian, resting for years, just waiting for that one critical moment where it's needed to save a life. Next up, we have thermal batteries. These guys are heavily utilized in critical aerospace applications and military guidance systems. In those kinds of high-stakes environments, an accidental discharge is simply not an option, period. So the electrolyte inside a thermal battery is designed to remain a solid block at room temperature. Since it's solid, the ions can't flow at all, and the battery is entirely inert. It's only when intense heat is introduced, which acts as a highly controlled trigger mechanism, that the solid electrolyte melts into a liquid, allowing the chemical reaction to finally kick off. It's an entire system built around absolute reliability under extreme pressure. And finally, our sources briefly touch on gas-activated batteries. These are kept completely inert until a specific gas, like oxygen, is introduced right into the system. You can honestly think of its activation almost like a person holding their breath underwater. The battery is totally still, just conserving all of its internal potential. But the moment it reaches the surface and takes a deep, restorative breath of oxygen, that electrochemical process sparks to life, and it gets straight to work. And that leads us to Chapter 4, a metaphor for potential. You know, it's super easy to keep this kind of engineering chemistry boxed up in the realm of textbooks, but there is a really profound metaphor here that connects deeply to your own life and your own energy. Check out this thought. Reserve batteries are a reminder that it is okay to rest, keeping your latent potential safe for the moments that truly matter. Look, every single day, you're essentially operating like a secondary battery. You go to class, you study, you work, you socialize, you completely drain yourself until you have to crash and recharge just to wake up and do it all over again. But the actual science of reserve batteries tells us that there's incredible value in sometimes just pulling the active components apart. It is completely okay to disconnect, to isolate your energy from the constant drain of daily burnout, and just sit in quiet storage for a little while. Which leaves us with one final peaceful thought to wrap up today's explainer. You have incredible latent potential inside of you, just waiting for the right trigger to activate it. You really don't have to be switched on and producing power every single second of the day. So, as you go about the rest of your week, I want you to ask yourself, what are you saving your energy for? Protect it, let it rest, and just trust that it's gonna be there when your critical moment arrives. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Take care of your energy.